Hello.
Hey.
Those are some familiar faces.
How's it going?
Good. How you guys been?
All right.
You doing okay with the quarantine?
I'm pretty much losing my mind. I've been home since March.
Yeah, it's a big change since I last saw you guys.
Yeah.
A big change. Oh, let me put that on vibrate there. So we've been recording all our training sessions and consultations and stuff. And then I just put it on YouTube, and if you ever need a refresher or anything like that, you can refer to it, because forget stuff. But also just some of the other videos might help you as well, because reactivity, leash walking, and all that stuff. So just so you know. So I saw the email, window reactivity, the backyard reactivity, okay, which seems to be worse because of the.
He's doing it right now.
Oh, really? I can hear him.
He's just looking right now, but if somebody or something goes past, I'm just waiting for him.
So catch me up. Just kind of fill me in, and we'll take it from there. And then if Bruce chimes in, then Bruce chimes in.
So yeah, basically he figured out, we got new curtains and he figured out that he could look through them, and we'll go and he'll look if he hears anything. It's like an immediate response. And he's barking and growling and jumping on the window. Kind of the same with the front door. If anybody drops off a package or if a dog is walking past, we have a neighbor who walks their dog around the same time every day, and he'll go to the door and freak out. And it's pretty much the same thing in the yard with the other dog, just attacking the fence and trying to get to the dog. And the other dog is now doing the same thing.
Okay. Is there an instigator there?
I think just as soon as Bruce knows that Harley's out there, he kind of just loses his shit.
Okay. That was the neighbor with the puppy, right?
Yeah.
It's just not a big dog.
Yeah, he's about Bruce's size now.
Okay. What kind of dog is it?
Black, chocolate lab, I think.
Chocolate lab. Okay. And when did has it been a static issue with trying to get that under control? Has it been you had control, then it just went out the window?
I think I had some control in the yard. There was at least a few weeks where he was doing better, and if I use when I use the collar, he would respond. He'd whine, but he'd stop. But now it's just like he doesn't care. We'll go full power, and it's nothing.
It used to be that, sometimes he'll go off, and then, a couple taps with the collar, he'll start whining and probably back off. But ever since, he's been on his medicine for hyperthyroidism, he's having a lot more energy. And it's like when he starts going, I'll crank it all the way up to 127 and it doesn't even face him.
And we'll do it on continuous too if the tapping doesn't work, and he doesn't care.
Yeah.
Okay. You don't have any footage of this, do you?
I don't think we have any. I can look, but
no, you're fine.
Another thing I also notice is that sometimes if the dog is out there, he doesn't go right away. He'll go up to the fence and we'll start looking, and then he'll put his paw up, and then when I go to tap him, that's when he goes nuts.
Sure. Yeah, that can happen for sure. Anything else?
He definitely has a ton more energy now that he's on the hypothyroid medication. So I don't know if that plays a part in it.
They give him uppers or something?
It's just the thyroid regulator, and I think he was just so lethargic before.
Sure. Okay. It's interesting.
Yeah.
But what was he at before and what is he at now? Weight-wise?
He's lost about 10 pounds. So he was about, 95? So he's about 80.
I think he stopped off at 96. I don't know what he was when he weighed last time.
Okay.
He was down about 10 pounds.
Yeah.
Okay. What's his activity level look like now? Aside, not what do you walk him an hour every day? is it just yard time because of the quarantine, or?
Mostly just yard time. We play with him in the house too. We'll do tug of war and kind of just messing around with him.
Yeah.
Sure. Do you guys have a treadmill?
Not here, no.
Okay. There's a couple of things here. How long ago was the diagnosis? The thyroidism?
Maybe a month ago.
A month and a half ago, maybe.
Okay. And then this kicked in around mid-March, right, with the whole COVID thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then so once the stay-at-home order was given, you guys pretty much just as much as possible just stay in.
Pretty much. I'm high risk, so I try not to be out.
Sure.
I've taken him for a couple walks when I notice there's like no one outside, and he's gone to the vet a couple times where I've walked him outside while we wait for them, and he does fine.
Yeah, I mean, there's really no change when he's walking. It's just in the house.
In the house and in the yard.
Yeah, it's in the house and in the yard.
Okay. And the reactivity during the walking?
No, he's pretty much fine.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's just the home.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in the yard.
Okay. That's good. Because if it was like a complete regression and it's like, I'm like, all right, excuse me, something's up.
Mm-hmm.
So since it sounds, it can be a couple of things. It can be, he's at the window.
Yeah.
It can be, the medication maybe, or also just physical activities most likely drop down quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So without those regular walks, he has more energy to fuel those behaviors. Okay.
We put him inside and we put the collar on him. If he's going nuts, he lays down. He's like a totally different dog.
Okay, so you're
yeah. If he's got the collar on, like if I put the collar on him right now while he's at the window, he'll walk away and he'll lay on the floor by my feet.
Okay. Did I ever talk to you about the bonker?
I don't think so.
Okay. So the bonker. So I think what we're potentially struggling with here is just not becoming dependent on the collar in all situations, right? Because you're just in your house.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem there is because you have that front window and that he can just kind of perch up, he's doing dog stuff. Like that's his TV, So not that you can't correct it, but I understand like where it's like we're in the house, we don't want to have to collar on him 24/7.
Yeah.
So then that's where we need another means of correction, at least within the home. And the bonker is simply a rolled up towel, and you can use hair ties or rubber bands to help it keep its shape so it's firm but soft.
Mm-hmm.
And you literally whack him with it.
Okay.
Remember, dogs are physical. He needs a physical correction.
Yeah.
And so since we don't have that collar to contract that muscle, I always do this. I've been using it for like the past year, and it's been fairly successful with a lot of my clients.
Mm-hmm.
And where they're still able to correct the dog without having to have the collar on them in the home. Okay. I'll send you 3 videos. I'll shoot you an email, one that shows how to make one, how to use it, and then one with the trainer actively using it so that you can see the intensity. Okay. What I would suggest is that you make a few of these, at least 3. It's possible in some cases that the dog will perceive it as a toy. Okay. So if you go to correct them and he like looks at it, hey, like goes to play with it, that's where the other ones come into play. So I just keep rounding off like correction, with the bonkers until he's like, what the hell? This isn't fun. Okay. You have to get the point across. So, like with me growing up, as I got older, my mom spanked me, to discipline me. But once I got older, I would laugh because it wasn't as effective. So she just would keep whooping me. It's really not a game is what I tell people, right?
Yeah.
So it's a similar concept. And, it's the same thing when you do your corrections with the e-collar, always just devoid of emotion, no frustration. Do it the moment you see him perk up. Don't wait for the full-blown blowing up at the window. The moment he lifts his head to acknowledge who's walking in front, right there is when you want to administer those corrections, okay?
Uh-huh.
and we can see if they're effective with him. You know, it's just a towel, so there's a potential that it may not be.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of dogs, because you can literally whack them with it, or you can even like throw it. Okay, and a lot of dogs may be fine with the whacking, but the throwing and the object in the air is what they don't like.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so that's a potential option for inside the home, even outside. But I would think if he's to that degree in the yard where 127 continuous, he's blowing through it. I'm kind of like maybe, but you can apply it there too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, every dog has like a weakness. My preference is e-collar because it's so easy to do the training and like transfer it to people and explain it,
Mm-hmm.
and the one that is almost always successful. But if I get stuck somewhere with the client, that's why I start to look at, well, we also got this tool, we also got, you know, this towel thing, blah blah blah, that kind of help close those gaps. So I would try that in the home, okay, and then you'll just let me know how that goes. The yard one is one that I would be. I want to see him being corrected.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
When you do 127 continuous, he kind of just, you know,
He'll pause.
it'll pause. Like it's shocking him.
Yep.
And then once you let go, he'll go back to it.
And then did you again?
Yeah, keep doing it again. Yeah.
How many times do you do it?
Usually until the neighbor takes their dog in. Like they get so sick of it that they remove their dog from the situation.
Either that or he'll maybe 3 or 4 times, and then he'll finally back away and start crying.
Okay. And when he starts crying, what do you do at that point?
He usually stays away and then starts sniffing around the yard to go to the bathroom.
If he goes back, then I'll shock him again.
Yeah.
But if he's staying away from it and whimpering, I'm not being super stringent.
Okay. So always even correct the whimpering, and I would correct it harshly as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I know, you know, when we were talking about obedience and the training and stuff, it's always like that gradual incline.
Yeah.
But you're in a context where you like, you know, 127 continuous 3 to 4 times to get them to back away is crazy.
Yeah.
Okay? And this is why with pits, you know, an aggressive pit is different than an aggressive German Shepherd.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So I love pitties, but they do take things to a different degree.
Yeah.
So that's why when I see one, I always tell people get more power just in case, because all that pit bull power is gonna fuel their issues. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm not surprised by it, but I'm kind of like Jesus, like that's crazy.
He's nuts.
Yeah. So what I would do here is, I understand the neighbor and like taking away their dog and stuff. Unfortunately, there's not much you can do with it unless you want to tell the neighbor like, hey, please, like we're really trying to resolve this problem.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And by him removing his dog, if you've not kind of gotten that point across to Bruce to cut the crap with the dog still out there, he's thinking his behavior got that to disappear.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah.
You see, so now you're being countered. And I understand why. It's a tricky situation, right? If I was your neighbor, I'd be like, hey, practice all day. So the other thing is when Bruce is retaliating and coming back, if the other dog is being reactive as well, that can be a potential to why he's not wanting to give up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because he's getting threat back. You see that? So it empowers him. Like, no, we're gonna finish this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So if it was like a passive dog and him doing this, since there's nothing to fuel him, I would imagine he would just give it up quicker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So because when you were telling me about it, I was like, yeah, this is there's a lot of pieces kind of working together.
Uh-huh.
And when you do the 127 continuous, do you hold it down or are you like kind of bursting it?
I'll hold it down for 5 to 10 seconds and then I'll give him a break if he starts to back off. I don't keep it held the entire time.
Okay. So what I would do.
You?
Because when you do it, he kind of pauses. And then I think once I see him pausing, then I'll let go. And then once he starts going again, and then I hit him again.
Gotcha. Okay. So what we need to create is him completely fleeing from the fence to where he's on the other side of the yard, and he like wants nothing to do with it, right? To like the point where it's a pain in the ass to bring him back inside because I know the entrance is coming along the fence.
Yeah.
And he's really, no, I don't want to even go near that, right? But
Yeah.
he has to go inside. You're trying to create that level of fear of doing that behavior to where he's literally running his ass the opposite way. So that's why I was like, I'd like to see it. But what I would do in the meantime is when you have him collared up, have it at 127 already, and then just be ready to go, right? And if you see him, like even if like maybe the neighbor's dog's not even outside, and he just runs out looking for something, don't continuous him, but pop him on 127 to snap that head out, snap him out of that. Right.
Yeah. Most of the time, if I see him start running, if I know the dog's out there and I see him start running, and I get him before he actually gets to the fence, he won't, go crazy. He'll, start whimpering and then go into the yard.
Okay. Yeah. Everything. It's always the easiest if you can get it prior.
The time he goes nuts. He's the worst when he's at the fence.
And then the dog comes.
And then I hit him.
Yeah. Yeah. So all that makes sense because again, it gives them something, there's an interaction now, so if he charges the fence or you just see the intensity, I wouldn't continuous him. I would just pop him on 127 nicks. Okay. Until he yips and he runs off. Okay.
Yeah.
If he blows up, because you mentioned it earlier.
Yeah.
Right. You keep the pressure on him.
Okay.
Because it's very common when we deal with aggression is that the brain was already there.
Yeah.
Clearly. And then the contraction just set him off. Is that when we deal with aggression, it's not uncommon to see that in the beginning. So I keep that pressure on him until he cuts the crap. Okay. Which in your case would be him moving away from the target.
Yeah.
Okay. I would save the continuous for when it's at its peak or, in that kind of threshold. And trust your judgment. If you feel like I should probably do continuous, just do continuous. Okay. Like even if you feel like you're going to do something else that I said, if your gut is thinking like, no, I think this is more intense, go with your gut. Okay. Cause I'm just going by what I can envision here.
Yeah.
So if you go out there and you're thinking like, yeah, this intensity needs continuous, do it. And what I would do is typically it's about 3 seconds. Okay. I would do 1, 2, 3, release. And you'll see a pause. And if you start to see this, like where he's going to go again, 1, 2, 3, release, and keep doing that. Right. And I would even ride him when he backs away because you're really trying to drive that point home. Like, don't do that. Right. So even if he's starting to buck away, I would like, boom, get away faster, right?
Yeah.
Because as you start to break that intensity and as you start to break that adrenaline, the body becomes more receptive to the stim. What allows him to ride through it is the fact that he's so pissed off.
Yeah.
You see that?
Yeah.
So even though you've shut it down, his body is just starting to feel the full power. And that's where it's really important to keep driving it in to get him to go like, oh crap, I really feel this now. Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing would be, I know you said 5 to 10 seconds. And if you do that, the burst approach that I just told you about, I would, and it's still struggling, then you do longer bursts. Okay. Like you said, 5, 10 seconds and then just count. It's going to be a shit show. Tell you that right now.
That's what I struggle with the most though. I think like, if it was just me and him in the yard, I wouldn't mind. I think it's the added stress of having our neighbor back there listening to me, trying to discipline him and their dog, and she's just back there like, Harley, stop, like not helping the situation at all. And it makes me, I think, probably react a little bit slower too.
Because you're like feeling bad about what's going to happen, or
I'm like focusing, like, is that dog out there? Before, like, I'm listening for the dog before he is.
Sure.
And then once it happens, I'm like, oh, which family member's out there? How is this going to go? Because different family members handle it differently, I feel like.
Sure. Who lives there?
It's a husband and wife and their two like teenage sons.
Sure. Okay.
So the kids are a little more cautious, I feel like, when we're out there. They're trying to get him back and not like let him go as far. His wife just is like,
his wife is just like, come when
it's
the
the dad
husband's
and the
out there,
yeah,
he'll actually go up to the dog, grab by the collar, and
bring him inside. But his wife is a little more lax, and she's just like, "Oh, buddy, come on."
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So considering everything you've told me, I don't find it surprising that you're having that issue. You know, doesn't mean it's a good thing, but I don't think you're doing anything wrong.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're handling. I think there's just other factors that unfortunately are playing a big part in working against you.
Yeah.
Okay, so when it comes to that, realistically speaking, I want you to have that in your mindset so that one, you don't beat yourself up, but it helps you kind of accept that stressor better. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You're like, hey, I did exactly what Jesse said, and we did it to the extreme. But yeah, for sure, when that dog is being reactive, Bruce has a much harder time releasing that. Like, that's not your fault.
Yeah. I have a question. So like right now he's just looking out the window.
Yep.
Do we let him look out the window and only do the bonker when he reacts, or do we just not let him look out the window?
I would just not let him look out the window.
Okay.
Because he can't have his cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He can't control himself.
Exactly. He's a dog, right?
And like, if we're watching TV and a dog comes up,
or any animal on the TV, he loses it.
There's times when he'll almost break the TV. He'll jump up on the TV stand and start pawing at the TV, and then
like bopping his nose into it.
Yeah. All that stuff you can bonk as well.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah. So the corrections. Remember, corrections are always meant to stop things.
Yeah.
It's just the level of correction is different for every scenario and dog, and their kind of sensitivity to that correction. Okay. So I would do that first in regards to the yard, because there was 3 points you brought up: the window, the yard, and I think Justin mentioned about when he blows up when being remoted.
Yeah.
Was that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So all that stuff doesn't sound out the ordinary. So I think it's just more pressure and really driving those points home. And if possible, record it.
Yeah.
So I can have a good visual. And if you would say what you're doing, so if you're like hold off, right, on, off, whatever, whenever you're doing your continuous, so I can see it, but it just helps for me to see like how long you're holding the button down and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's another thing you can do to kind of help if this ends up being a struggle. You should see progress. If it seems like slow progress, it's still progress, because remember, you have the added factor of another reactive dog.
Yeah.
Okay? And that's normal when I talk to my clients, because like with leash reactivity, one of the things they struggle with is other reactive dogs. So what I'll tell them is, because they're throwing threat at each other.
Yeah.
So that's why I like using dogs behind fences, because they're usually charging and running back and forth and barking. And it gives the owner something controlled to practice with, which is very much similar to being on the street and another dog blowing up. Okay. So we'll see what happens with that. Another thing that you can do with Bruce is, I'm assuming he just like does his thing throughout the day, right? Like he's not doing any kind of duration work, like staying in place for a period of time or anything like that.
No, not really.
Okay.
When we've been home, we've kind of just letting him do what he wants.
Okay. So the added thing that you can do, and I think it will be beneficial for you, is that, and I may even do this during times that, 4 to 7 is like a busy time with people coming home or whatever, and be more kind of alert to what's going on outside, is utilizing the place command. I don't think we went over it, but it's super easy to teach. Are you familiar with that?
He does he does it like when we're in our room and we tell him to go to bed. Like we just tell him go to bed and he'll go to his bed in our room.
Okay.
And he knows down. Like we've done a little bit of that.
Okay, so I would either do place or down. And I have a bunch of videos of place on my YouTube channel. It's super, super easy to teach, okay? But the point of this would be, you know, he's so used to just doing whatever, right? That from the decision of I get up and I want to hop on the couch and nap, to the decision of I want to hop on the couch and bark out the window, they're the same.
Yeah.
He just chose to do something. He does whatever he wants, right? So adding some control within the home, and exaggerated control, like for a period of time, one, to challenge him, because if he's like in a down position and he hears a dog walking in the front door, technically he's not allowed to charge, right? So he has to really contain himself in order to hold that command.
Yeah.
So even if he perked his head up, I would correct him for that as well, you know? So you're just adding more control so that it's not just always a free-for-all within the home. That can help. In most cases, really just correcting things, and just the standard structure of like walking their dog in the heel tends to fix most stuff. But if needed, that's something that you can add in that's not a lot of work, that I think may help you.
Okay.
Okay. Questions or other?
You want to mention the baby thing?
Sure.
We're sometime this year going to start trying for kids.
Oh.
And I guess we're just a little worried about him with that and how he'll be when we bring them home, since he did have a little reactivity with some of the smaller kids that were outside.
Yeah. Okay.
And what we should do, like planning for that.
Sure. So, and I do this with all dogs, okay? And I'm actually really glad you asked that, because I got a lot of people that ask me this question. This is good. Is regardless if you had the sweetest golden retriever or to like a small little Maltese to Bruce, I treat all of them the same when it comes to children, okay? Most people are wanting the Instagram friendly, gets a lot of likes, my baby sleeping with my dog.
Yeah.
Okay. And when I see those, I always kind of roll my eyes. I'm like, well, that's, I'm sure the dog is sweet, but
Not necessarily safe.
Yeah, there's a lot of risk there that people tend to assume and take things at face value of, like, my dog has never had an aggression problem. And those very same dogs bite kids. Okay, so I just go, you're a dog, you got teeth, you could potentially bite, so I'm gonna just take these precautions. Okay. Is when before the baby comes home, if possible, bringing in blanket, clothing, stuff that has the baby scent, and leaving it like, on the countertop, just to get the scent in the home, to build some familiarity is one thing. And this is all like dependent on the client. Some of my clients will use the remote. So when the dog catches the scent, they'll actually remote the dog to back away from the scent to create space. Okay, it doesn't make negative association. The dog just thinks, well, every time I get, 3 feet of the scent, this goes off. So I'm going to stay outside of 3 feet.
Okay.
And that's a kind of personal preference thing. Okay, so you bring home the scent, establish a boundary, and you pick the boundary. I had one family that the husband was super comfortable, right? He was like, yeah, 2 feet. And the wife was like 8 feet. And I said, go with the wife. Because I was like, if you have no problem with 2 feet, then you're not going to have any problem with 8 feet. And so there's that. And then when it comes to bringing the baby home, don't be nervous, okay? This is where actually using your duration control would be effective. You want to start doing that now.
Okay.
As opposed to waiting till here's the baby. Bruce, we need you to not move for a long period of time. So if you come in and he's super curious and stuff, you can of course use the remote to back him away. And then the added thing you can put in is, all right, Bruce, go lay your ass down over there, and you're not going to move while I walk around with the baby and stuff, in case the baby starts crying and all that stuff. Okay. And what you're trying to build is just coexistence. getting used to like there's another, being in the home, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to make you paranoid or I don't want to make you scared here, but just so that you're aware, some dogs are completely fine with the baby being in the home, but then they lose their shit when the baby cries. Okay. And it can be just because the baby is crying and they're like barking, like, who's going to take care of this? And in other cases, it's a negative response of like, let me get to that baby.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So I would opt for more collar in the beginning than not. Okay. And really force that duration control now. So you have plenty of time to practice it, abuse the hell out of it. So it'll make your life a lot easier once that day comes. Okay. And of course you have 9 months from the, conception date and all that stuff. But the more you do now, the better off you'll be in the future.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what we want to watch for is typically dogs are fine until the baby starts to crawl. Okay. So once so it goes from, you're this inanimate object that would like drool and, cry to now you're crawling around.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to watch Bruce very carefully. Okay. If he looks uncomfortable and he could be laying down and he just kind of does this, right? That's avoidance behavior. He's already telling you he's uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let the baby crawl towards him.
Okay.
So this is where we start thinking about dividers. I might put Bruce in a kennel or in a room while the baby has their loose time, because one, if the baby gets too close, the ideal response from Bruce should be to move away.
Mm-hmm.
That should be the ideal response, okay? Because he's saying, I don't know what your game plan is, but you make me uncomfortable, so I'm gonna just leave you alone and give you space, and like I want space over here. So that's good because it's avoiding conflict. But if you let the baby continue to crawl towards Bruce and kind of chase him around, at some point he's gonna feel trapped and go like, okay, like I try to get away from you, I'm gonna bite you now to tell you to back off.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I had this happen to a client and their kid. The dog did everything. The dog was walking away, and I said, "This is good, but just so that you know, don't force the interaction between your kid and the dog, and don't let the kid crawl towards the dog." Fast forward a few months past training and all that stuff, I ran into the guy, the dad, and I was like, "Oh, how's he doing?" And he's like, "Oh, he's great, but he bit my son in the face." And it was a Shih Tzu. Okay, it was a Shih Tzu. It wasn't a big dog. It was a Shih Tzu.
Yeah.
And I was like, I already knew what happened. But I was like, tell me what happened. He's like, you were right. His dog's name was Crash. Crash was on the couch. The son started crawling on the couch and cornered the dog in the corner of the sectional and in the face.
Oof.
Okay, so it could have been prevented.
Yeah.
They put too much faith in their dog. And,
Yeah.
and I mean, even in the beginning, I told him, I called it out like, your dog's doing good. He's avoiding conflict. Leave him alone. Don't force it,
Yeah.
But they were hoping that it had been long enough. I'm like, no, it takes a long time. Whenever there's that kind of response, it takes a long time before a dog will kind of accept, because dogs mature very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
In like 8 weeks, they're romping around, jumping, biting, eating, all that stuff. Whereas humans, we take years to develop.
Yeah.
So typically, by the time the child understands the concept of gentle and be nice and can take direction, that's typically when, if there's ever been any tension between them, is when the dogs start to kind of accept them, because now they're not in that awkward stage anymore. And also with the added benefit of the child being able to take direction, it ends up being for more positive, controlled experiences. Okay. So main things would be, bringing home the scent, getting them familiar. If you want to establish a boundary, decide your distance, use your remote. Expect in the beginning having the remote on more often than not. Lots of control. More control is best. And really just, watch Bruce's responses. If the baby cries 100 times and he just sleeps right through it, he don't care.
Yeah.
Right? Don't be surprised if he goes from not caring about the baby, and then when the baby's crawling, then he cares. That's very common. Okay. Then the walking stage as well, because kids, they wobble and stuff, and that to dog is awkward. And then when the kid's old enough to run around and scream and all that stuff, again, you're always watching these things. I know dogs can seem as if they're being very tolerant and things like that. You always want to err on the side of caution. He is a dog at the end of the day. And even if he, nipped or bit at a child, when you look at the whole context. So like for me, if I went to my friend's house and he has 4 kids and they're under the age of 8 and they're running around screaming, I'm not going to get up and whack one of his kids to tell him to stop, right? That's not my place. A dog will. A dog is like, these are my boundaries, and if you don't respect them, I'm going to correct you, because he's viewing the child like as a puppy. And they bite to correct their puppies, but it doesn't translate well in the human world, right? Yeah. So when I get these, I've had calls where they say, Jesse, my dog bit my child, I need you to fix it. And I'll ask, tell me what happened. And they're like, well, I don't know, I wasn't there. So that's on them. I was like, that's your fault, because kids never unattended with a dog.
Yeah.
Or 2, they'll be like, well, my kid was climbing on him, which he's always been fine with for years. I'm like, well, that was the day that he wasn't fine with it. It was years, of this kind of like annoying behavior that he or she is being exposed to. Okay. So just like you have rules and boundaries, things you're comfortable with, so does Bruce. And when you think that way, you'll keep yourself and your child out of harm's way. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Do you have any questions about that?
No.
Yeah. Other than that, with the kid thing, when they start to drop food and stuff, I leave it up to the owner, but a lot of times I'll tell them, like, if you don't mind it, you can let it go, because it creates a positive association. Dog's like, hey, when you eat, you drop shit. I like you. So that, like, I get it. Like, there's some stuff that, how'd you say, I do let slide. That kind of sounds like, because I'm very strict with a lot of things, but because I want that positive association with the child, that I'll tell the owner, like, sometimes there's some things that you can let slide that you typically wouldn't. Okay. Yeah, other than that, I don't think there's much, it's really just play it by ear. And when that day comes, you're more than welcome to always, shoot me an email or whatever. Because it's a common question that I get. So
cool.
All right.
Yeah. Other questions?
If we have him in the yard, and let's say he starts chasing after a bird or a squirrel or something, do we let that go, or do we correct that?
You can correct whatever you don't want.
Okay.
Is he howling?
He's whining.
Oh. What I would suggest is that you switch your play of tug or whatever play you do in the home for the yard. Okay. So dogs learn by association. I personally like to keep the home structured, disciplined. So like for me as a kid, if I got too loud when I played, my mom would kick me out. It was like, nope, if you're getting that loud, take it outside. Right? So I think the same thing of the dog, because then he starts to associate more so structure in the home. And then outside is when we can do some other stuff. Yeah. Just kind of helps bring that separation. I think this will help as well, if you're thinking long-term with the baby and stuff, because you're going to be engaging with the baby, which can potentially excite Bruce. If you've kind of left that out the picture for a while, hopefully he doesn't try to engage. The other thing that you can do is if he's used to playing in the home and he comes up to you with like a toy, like demanding you play with them, correct them. So then it starts to become, you're not initiating the play anymore. Like, we'll come get you when we want to play with you. Okay, so it's on your rules.
Is like bones still okay? Like for him to chew in the house?
Yeah, that's all fine. It's anything that creates an energy.
Okay.
That I would save for, the outside space or whatever. Okay. I would try that. If we find there's still issues, I'm big on discipline. Make it happen, right? Yeah. But I think if there's a coincidence of he lost weight, but then he also lost an outlet, right? In terms of exercise and stuff with the quarantine. is that's a possibility as well, because he's got a lot of energy to fuel all the negative behaviors. So that's why I asked if you had a treadmill.
Yeah.
Something to think about. I had a client very similar to you, in terms of like reactivity in the yard and stuff. And I had, it's an elderly couple, they're like 70 years old. And, they're not going to go on an hour-long walk with their dog. So they were having these issues. So I said, would you be willing to get her a treadmill? So they picked up a doggy treadmill, I believe on Amazon. I think she paid like $300 or something. And it helped a lot. Because they could put the dog on for an hour, burn off a lot of energy and stuff. They're not too big, depending on the one that would fit Bruce's size. I think theirs ran about 3 feet by 4 feet. Okay. And it's, it's a dog treadmill. You can also get a human treadmill.
Yeah, my parents' dogs are trained on the human treadmill.
Yeah. So you can do either or. The human one's going to run you, if you get it new, it's a few $1,000s.
Yeah.
And you can get them on Craigslist for like $100. I've gotten 2 for $100. Human ones. But of course, I don't know what's going on now with the quarantine stuff.
Yeah.
So another potential that I would think about, so if he's not getting his regular exercise, he at least has an outlet. And even during the winter months, he has a physical outlet that you're not having to worry about. So that's something that I would consider. And if you have any questions about that, you can always shoot me an email as well. And I have how-to videos in terms of treadmill training on my YouTube channel as well. So I can always send those to you. Okay. I know you had asked about the like the board and train stuff. Honestly, the stuff that you're dealing with, it wouldn't really help you. Okay. Because one, it's stupid slow over here right now. It's so slow. And that's all stuff that's in the home. We can replicate it to a degree, but it wouldn't transfer to you. Something that it has to be done in your setting. So that's why I did the Zoom, because when I read through the stuff, I was like, this is some stuff that unfortunately board and train wouldn't help. Okay. Anything else?
No, I don't think so.
No.
Okay. Try that stuff out. Record if you can, especially if you feel like it's just not getting across. And then this way I have something to watch and you can email them to me. As long as you see progress or he's easier to stop, you're making good progress. And I would most likely think that you may not be able to eliminate it completely, but more so just make it easier to address and faster. Okay, just especially if that dog's barking behind the fence. Okay. I'll send you the links for the bonker videos. And if you need anything else, you just give us a holler, okay?
Sounds good.
I actually have one more question.
No more questions.
When he goes after, when he does the fence thing, it doesn't happen very often. Like, you know, maybe it's like maybe once a week, if that. Like the duration between the events, does that play a problem into getting him to train, or is he still just gonna,
No. What matters is your consistency.
Okay.
Yeah. So what I would do is, or not do, is assume, or kind of like, I get a lot of clients that let the dog out hoping there's not going to be any reactivity. And I tell them, no. Just always plan for reactivity. Outside, there's a lot of stuff, right? So just collar him up and 127 as soon as you let him out the door. Okay. So you're already prepped. So dogs, it's all about consistency. So if every time, even if it's once a week, he blows up and you get him to retreat and cut the crap, it's going to stack. You're going to make progress. But if it's already once a week, I would bet that's a bit of time. I would expect a longer gap in terms of, or a kind of a longer incline on your progress, because there's so much time between them. But it should be fairly evident from one time to the next time, and you're like, holy crap, like, that was a lot easier than last time. Okay. And even if you go months without reactivity, I would just keep the collar on him. Okay. Because I guarantee you, the day you take that collar off and he blows up and the dog's out there, he's gonna blow up. Okay. Other questions?
Nope.
I think that's it.
Well, it's good to hear from you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
Good seeing
you.
Glad that everybody's safe and healthy.
Yeah, you too.
So if you need anything from us, like I said, give us a holler. Otherwise, I'll get you those links and we'll be in touch, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.